Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus.
Given the recent advances that have come to the light from China around AI, there is no doubt that everybody in US on the industry side as well as on the strategy and the military side, people have been really worried. And something like this, I can say, was very much expected that they should put their best foot forward. And how I see it is really to ensure that USA as a nation really is ahead of everybody else in terms of AI, especially the applications around it.
Yes, absolutely. US staying ahead of the rest of the world when it comes to AI. Srinath, I want to read out this Oracle statement that they just released on the Stargate project. They say that it will secure American leadership in AI, create hundreds of thousands of American jobs, generate massive economic benefit for the entire world. And it is a project that will support the reindustrialization of the United States. Give us an idea of how significant this project really is. I'm fully aware of the fact that in the past as well, 8 years back when Trump was president, he announced a couple of very big projects like this. There was one for chips, if I recall correctly, which a $10 billion project, which doesn't seem to have taken off till date. Will Stargate be any different?
Yes, Sandeep, I'm seeing it slightly different, and I think US has probably got it act right. If you look at the history of the 20th century, it was all about financial capital. But I think very subtly, the US is moving towards controlling probably what is the data capital. Which means if you look at the tech behemoths, all the big tech firms are actually essentially the US entities. And
Yes.
Web 1 and Web 2, we saw them consolidate power and influence. And
Yes.
very subtly with this, the other unsaid conversation, what we should speak about is the last week's President Biden's, one of the last act of AI diffusion regime,
Yes.
which actually slots different countries, including India and China, as the third tier, which means that India and China need approval even to buy AI chipsets.
Yes.
So, which is why I call it, I think it is US consolidating its power towards one, data capital as well as cloud capital, because I think
Right.
that's the nature of 21st century AI.
US consolidating its lead over the rest of the world in data. Colonel Avasthi, we discussed the US rules on AI a couple of days back on the outgoing Biden administration's rules that they've put us into a third category, where we need to take permissions and approvals, as Srinath just mentioned. I was looking at our spends on AI. The government of India plans to spend 10,371 crore rupees on artificial intelligence. That's over $1 billion. And there's an Indian AI mission that will establish a comprehensive ecosystem catalyzing AI innovation through strategic programs. Are we underspending when it comes to artificial intelligence? I mean, there can be no match between $1 billion and $500 billion. Is this a resource game, or should we kind of tie up with, say, some of the big Western partners that we have? We have strategic partnerships with the United States, for instance.
Yes, Sandeep, initially, we have to understand that whatever the announcements have been made, the initial investment in this is only $100 billion.
Yes, it
by
will.
SoftBank.
Over the couple of years, it will go up to about 500.
Over a couple of years. Yes. That's correct. Over a couple of years, it should be 500. It does not specify how many years and whatever it is. So I'm so sure that Masayoshi Son and Sam Altman and Larry Ellison will do something
Yes.
at the end of the day. And we need to understand two things in this. The first is that any kind of announcement in this kind of a domain has to look at two aspects. One is the financial aspect, which you've already alluded to. The other is what are the operational responsibilities.
Right.
Now, while you have OpenAI, you have the Japanese giant SoftBank, and of course you have the cloud giant Oracle doing whatever they have to do, and they've been told what to do. There are other players like ARM, Nvidia, and Microsoft also, who are part of the same, if I may say, a caucus. So the distribution of the financial and the operational responsibility still remains to be seen as to how it pans out in times to come. Now, three things come out very clearly from this announcement. A, it highlights America's potential.
Yes.
We have to be very clear about it. The second thing is it ensures physical and virtual infrastructure. Clearly,
Yes.
it brings out very clearly that there has to be a very clear virtual as well as physical infrastructure which has to come into play. And the
Yes.
third part is that the US will remain the most important and most potent power in AI,
Yes.
right? Now, coming back to the India AI mission, which you just alluded to, it came into being in the March of 2024. And you just mentioned that the cabinet has sanctioned around 10,371.92 crores
Yes.
for the mission. This looks at four major issues. A, computing capacity. It looks at innovation centers. It looks at data sets platform and how they are going to be developed in times to
Yes.
come. And of course, it looks at the startups financing. The missing link in this
Yes.
entire system is that where is the industry?
Right.
At the end of the day, when you have such great, missions and tirades coming into play at a
Yes.
national level, the industry has to get plugged in. So where is
Yes.
that? Because at the end of the day, you just can't leave everything, as I always say in most of your shows, that you can't leave everything to the government. Where does the
Yes.
industry come in?
Right.
So there has to be a case of parallel funding in case it has to come in a place and time of its own choosing, wherein it only not only bolsters the entire the India AI mission, but also gives it wings to fly in times to
Yes.
come, especially in terms of the AI startups.
Right.
Now, insofar as this entire announcement is concerned in the $500 billion, etc., Sandeep, I will be a little cautious.
Right.
I will not be able to say as to how it will pan out because I feel it's a little too early to start speculating and say that it's colossal and it's very good and it's gigantic and this will happen and that will happen and all of
Yes.
that. So I think we should wait and watch as
Yes.
to how things pan out on ground
We should wait and
and
watch
can
indeed,
this
Colonel
entire
Awasthi.
thing deliver.
Yes, can it deliver? Of course, we will be tracking that story. But the point that you made is very is spot on. The fact that where is the Indian industry in all of this? Where is the Indian industry in our AI mission? And I think what Trump seems to have done is lined up the American industry right from day one. In fact, even before he took over, he was addressing press conferences with Masayoshi Son and asking him to commit money, put money down on the table where it mattered, 100 billion to 200 billion. Gaurav, where is Indian industry in all of this? Where are our N. Chandrasekharans and Nandan Nilekanis, where they should be actually, taking this initiative like they are in the United States? Is the government missing something here?
Definitely. Here, what I see is we are missing the big view, the strategic view on. And at some level, I feel we are still missing that confidence that
Yes.
no, we can really go for that those big problems. Because if you look at all the time when Sam Altman came and
Yes.
mocked us that no, you can't do a foundation model, somehow everybody has just accepted it, which is
Right.
so wrong. I mean, worldwide now China is building foundation models.
Yes.
There are companies there who are coming out with. Just to give an example again in terms of IP. China got almost 13,000 patents around AI last year.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the
We are
largest
nowhere
number
near.
of patents in the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I
So
think we're
that-
missing out, by India Inc. missing in there is no India Inc. In the government's plans. Srinath, is that a major problem here? There are no Nandan Nilekanis here. There's no N. Chandrasekharan here. The government seems to be laying down the policy and putting the money over there. There is no all of country approach where Trump seems to have led the way with pulling out the big tech sarkar, if you can call it that.
Sure, I think I'm probably more harsher when I say that we have missed the entire value chain of AI, Sandeep.
Yes.
I mean, for example, US way back introduced the Chips and Science Act and
Yes.
committed 280 billion. The Chinese government alone has spent about $200 billion in the last 10 years of investments in private sector.
Yes.
Apart from the private sector pumping in about $104 billion, apart from creating centers of excellence, which India doesn't have.
Yes.
But more importantly, I think we are cocooned, and this is a kind of a cynicism that we have not spent enough R&D budgets at all as corporate.
Yes.
We are woefully behind. And
Yes.
yet we are also in the same mindset of what I call the cyber coolies. I mean, our entire IT and ITES industry is based on being a cyber coolie and not really
Yes.
up in the value chain, which also has a genesis problem in our education policy. I mean, while we were all been talking about the NEP that will change education contours,
Yes.
our STEM ecosystem is woefully behind artificial intelligence. If our kids are learning C++ and COBOL and some kind of data science, how are they going to actually go and talk about AI and take care of or compete with the US? A good
Absolutely.
kid probably just and a good entrepreneurs just simply migrate. And in
Right.
India, I mean, let's face it, we all have been speaking about ease of doing business.
Yes.
Ask any Web3 or AI entrepreneur, where is the ease of doing business despite saying that, hey, Startup India movement and all that? They're still struggling. I think so. AI, we are awfully behind. And while all these 10,000 crore and 20,000 crore, I don't share the bullishness that all of you share, that India will eventually catch up. The fear is that even if we are probably 10% of what the US and China are doing, I think we are
Yes.
far better off. We are way, way behind.
We're way behind, and Colonel Avasthi, this is something that you've been focusing on for the last couple of years. I've read all your policy pieces on AI and what needs to be done. Where exactly are we in the AI race? You have the United States and the Western world, China, close behind. Where is India really, and what is it that we really need to do in this?
All right. So, Deep, thanks. This is a very, very important thing which you brought out. See, at the end of the day, there are two kinds of hedging. One is, as I always say, one is the financial hedging, and the
Yes.
other is the talent hedging, which you need to function on. Now, a lot of people in the world would say that R&D is a function of a cerebral acumen, or R&D is a function of your brains, etc., etc. I politely disagree with the statement because R&D is a function of money. It's as simple as that, which I think Srinath's also very politely brought out. It's a function of money. It's as simple as that. That is one. The second part is, you also mentioned about the India Inc., which is going to be finally the end user of all of this. So while there would be a lot of things happening, there seems to be a little trust deficit, which needs to be bridged between the industry, the academia, and the government, because all three are different pillars, and all of them have to converge. All these three vectors have to converge in a particular manner. Now, two major things which India should do, not looking at the $1 billion advantage vis-a-vis $100 billion and $500 billion and
Yes.
all these colossal figures and zeros that we speak about, and in binary terms of yes, no, and all of that. But the whole thing is we need to now develop foundational Indic language models in India, which improve the reach of AI to the vernacular as well as the other kind of advantage. And the second part is we have to concentrate very, very seriously on talent development. You have the demographic advantage. You have
Yes.
1.5 million engineers which come out every year. Your STEM prowess is comparable to none in the world. You're the best. So you might as well now get into talent. The more you develop talent, the more you'll
Yes.
be able to offset the financial aspect of it in times to come. That's
Right.
how I look at it.
Yeah, big gaps in our AI strategy there. Gaurav, what is it that India really needs to do to catch up? I'm aware of the fact that we possibly need to collaborate as well, because all of these countries that we just spoke about, they have excellent relations with India. India has a strategic partnership when it comes to electronics with the United States. Is this something for us to leverage? Or as you suggest, as Colonel Avasthi just suggested, we need to create our own large language models and our own AI applications?
We absolutely need to create our own, and I'll extend it further, not just on the linguistic side of things, but even in other areas. For example, in medical, in life sciences, there are huge opportunities. One distinct advantage that we have in India is data.
Right.
Even Jensen Huang, he came to India, he said India should not export data and import AI. We are
Yes.
still not realizing and leveraging that power. And from a policy perspective, it's really we are still stuck how to get data to build AI. As we already spoke about, startups are struggling, industry is also struggling. There are no
Right.
clear policies, there is no clear way. For example, there are 1 lakh patients coming to AIMS every day. With
Yes.
that, we can come up with some of the best models in the world.
Right.
But we are not doing anything. We're just sitting there.
Absolutely, we're just becoming, a huge data center for the rest of the world to exploit, as Jensen Huang seems to have mentioned. But Srinath, is there something that you really expect the government to do now? The budget's around the corner. Of course, Trump has fired the first shots in the AI race with this Manhattan project for artificial intelligence. Do you see the government waking up and doing something about it?
I think the largest challenge, Sandeep, is this. You can do whatever budgetary allocation or announce new centers of excellence, but none of us or most of us don't know the shape they have been taking and what they're actually delivering. Unless we get those, and unless we actually work as a PPP model, here government alone cannot do the heavy lifting. The private sector has to come in, and innovative sectors also has to come in. So amongst these, where do we juxtapose intellectual property? How do we promote IP? How do we promote research centers and even thought leadership? I mean, we have not had a single large thought leadership paper on this entire topic from India, right? By the end of the day, you're still looking at about 64 global centers of excellence, about 60 of them in the US, and very scattered, the rest in China and Germany. India does not have a single one. So all our claims to fame about talking about legacy IITs and IIMs don't cut corner unless we do anything to it. And that's where I'm a little cynical when we say that we've missed the boat already, is my fear.
We've missed the boat already, Colonel Awasthi. Is it too late for us, or is there some course correction we can possibly do? Put some more outboard motors or something on our AI mission and try and push it ahead?
Sandeep, India has that innate capability which can disappoint both the optimist and the pessimist alike.
Yes.
So we haven't missed any boat. That is one. I would suggest only a three-vectored approach. A, you need to put in a lot of money on the R&D now,
right,
at all levels, and you have to look at now the second tier and third tier cities also. I mean, you have to get away from the legacy, engineering institutions, which I would not name, but you know what I mean.
But give us a figure. Can you put a figure to this, Colonel Awasthi? Since we started by talking about this $500 billion, $500 billion outlay that the US has outlined, what is the kind of figure that India should be looking at?
See, the ISM began with a figure of around $10 billion, the Indian Semiconductor Mission.
Yes.
I would say we should start pegging it at least a $10 billion figure. 76,000 crores should be the minimum that we should begin with. And I'm sure the well-begun part will be half done. The second thing is we need to have an accountability of academia while we look at it, because at the end of the day, it's public money and the academia needs to be accountable for it. It cannot be in absolute oblivion as to how things happen. And the third part is the industry has to plug in. India Inc. has to plug in, Sandeep. If you do not plug in, if the industry does not provide parallel funding, in democracies, unfortunately or fortunately, people have this strange way of thinking that the government will do everything.
Yes.
The government cannot do everything.
Yes.
At the end of the day. So till such time, you have these three vectors of more R&D, more accountability of academia, and more industry plugging into the system. I'm afraid we will lose the plot even if we have the requisite funding by the government of India.
Yes, absolutely. Gaurav, closing comments from you. Anything that you'd like to add to this very comprehensive list of suggestions our experts have given us for India's AI mission?
So I'll also speak about three things. So what we need, as I call the AI magic, happens when we have PDC, so people, data, and compute. Now, out of these three, people definitely is the most important. We already spoke about capacity building. We need to urgently get our youth onto AI. We need to urgently transform the whole curriculum and get them on it. Data is again the very, very important part. Luckily, we have data. It's just not being used. We need to act on the policy side. We need to cut the roadblocks. We need to get this data out. Even Amitabh Kanji recently mentioned that this needs to be unlocked. And finally, the compute. Yes, we have some good news in terms of the GPU that government has already committed. $1 billion around for that, for 10,000 GPU. That is good, but that's again, that's too little, too late. We need to do at least 10x to get there.
We need to do 10x together, and the PDC that you mentioned is spot on, Gaurav. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening as we speak about America's Manhattan Project for Artificial Intelligence. Earlier, I spoke with former IT Minister and senior BJP leader Rajiv Chandrasekhar on the implications of the coming techno-industrial complex in the United States. Here's what he had to say.
Technology, we all recognize today, empowers, transforms countries, empowers people. So it can't be like in the old days where hydrocarbon was used to coerce economies in countries, or military power was used to coerce and browbeat countries. That technology will be divided into the haves and the have-nots. This is, our Prime Minister repeatedly said that. He said that in December 2023 when India assumed the chairmanship of the Global Partnership of AI. But I don't think everybody else subscribes to that thought. So you have China today, who's clearly on a decade, last decade, embarked on a path of somehow corralling technology and controlling the future of tech. And the Americans for the last 5 to 7 years were remarkably blasé, because every technology that they innovated was proliferating and ending back in China.
Right.
From stealth fighters to chips and to the AI. Yes. Now the Americans have woken up, and you can argue that they're overcorrecting.
Right.
That export controls have failed. There is still a lot of leakage of prohibited products and technologies, as we know with Korea's missile launches and AQ Khan in Pakistan, that those non-proliferation regimes and export control regimes have never worked. But in the context of tech, now they are putting these barriers and sort of color coding, labeling to countries and saying these countries can have it and these countries should not have it. Will it work? I don't know. I think the US PRC, lot of, let's say, face-off in the field of AI and tech, it's early days. We don't know what the end of that will look like. But the Chinese are not going anywhere. They've got access in the last decade and a half to too much technology for this to do anything but slow them down.
Right.
But I think that is what the American government is calculating, that if you slow down the Chinese, somehow that American technology will then proliferate and dominate and shape the future of tech. We cannot be mute spectators to that.
Right.
We are too large an economy. We're going to be the third largest economy in the world. We have a very, very vibrant digital economy which depends on all this.
Right.
And so therefore, I have argued in some articles recently that India must have its own sovereign AI strategy. We can be and we must be open to partnerships with trusted countries like the Americans and the Koreans and the Australians and the Israelis. But at the end of the day, we must still have our own capabilities to make our own position a lot more credible and strong as we face off with this battlefield of the future. I call AI the battlefield of the future.
It is indeed. And does it strike you the fact that we have a strategic technology partnership with the United States, with ISET, but when it comes to AI, we are out of the club. So what challenges do you see for our sovereign AI?
There were two areas that we have been out remarkably for several decades. One is semiconductors.
Yes.
Then during the UPA, whatever footprint we had on electronics vanished because of imports. And we have, under Prime Minister Modi ji, built back the electronics footprint, and we are now a strong presence, growing presence in the electronics GVCs of the world. 75 years we had no presence in semiconductors, and now we are a growing presence. I'm not saying that we are there yet, but we are made these very good early steps in semiconductors. And the Prime Minister last year announced a 20,000 crore India AI mission. He is very clear that we have and we will build these sovereign AI capabilities. So I think we may be a little late to the game, arguably, maybe 2 years late, but that like semiconductors, we will also be a player in the global AI ecosystem. And the fact that our ambitions, our Prime Minister has very clearly said, is to make sure our AI, our DPI is available to the rest of the world, and that we are on the round table as the countries of the world sit and shape the future of tech. India will certainly be at that lead table with our own views and with our own approach.
The 4 foreign ministers of the Quadrilateral of Democracies, or Quad, met in Washington today. They sent out a strong message to China, opposing Beijing's coercive tactics in the South China Sea. The stage is now set for a Quad meeting in New Delhi to be hosted by Prime Minister Modi where President Trump, Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese will attend. What does this China plus 4 matter for New Delhi? Joining me to discuss this are Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar and Pramit Pal Chaudhary. Gentlemen, welcome to the News 9 Plus show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ambassador Sajanhar, what's your reading of the meeting of the 4 foreign ministers, the Quad foreign ministers in the United States? Does the Quad seem to be as much of a priority for the Trump administration as it is as it was for the Biden administration?
Well, thank you very much, Sandeep. Yes, if I were to give you a very precise and succinct response, yes, it does appear to be. And till the meeting took place, till Mr. Trump took over, there was a bit of a question mark on that, because you would have seen that whether it was in 2017, Mr. Trump in 1.0 had gone back on many of the very significant initiatives that had been taken by the Obama administration.
Right.
So here also he has taken many steps to do away with several of the Biden initiatives, even in terms of Paris Accord, climate change,
Yes.
getting out of WHO, signed so many orders that have debunked many of the initiatives taken by Biden. So here also it was thought that since Mr. Biden had paid so much of attention and given so much of time, effort and energy to the revival of Quad,
Yes.
meaning putting it at the summit level, you would recall that Mr. Biden came to office in January 21 and the first Quad summit.
Yes.
Of course, it was in a virtual format, was held in March of 2021.
Yes.
And over the three and a half years, we've seen there were 6 summits. I don't think there's been any international organization in which,
Yes.
global summits have taken place. So there were some question marks whether Mr. Trump will also give it the same salience. But, Sandeep, my own understanding, my own assessment was that Mr. Trump would do so because Quad is really his own baby.
Right.
He's the one who revived it in November
Yes.
2017
Right.
on the sidelines of the East Asia Summit in Manila. And so, he would be taking personal ownership and personal pride in the fact that after a long interregnum of about 10 years, because the
Yes.
last Quad meeting was held in 2007. So I
Yes.
think the fact that these foreign ministers have met within a few hours, as Dr. Jaishankar put it,
Yes.
of the inauguration of President Trump, I think that is very significant, and it really sends out, as the joint statement says, a very strong and clear message that all the 4 countries are
Yes.
very strongly committed to taking the issue forward.
Right. All the 4 countries are strongly committed to taking the issue forward. Pramit, is there a danger that Trump could be stacking up on bargaining chips to make a deal with China when he finally meets Xi Jinping? Could the Quad then be a casualty of such a meeting, you think? Or is Trump actually fully behind the Quad, as Ambassador Sajanhar mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Quad doesn't really offer anything to be bargained with. The only thing America could do is withdraw from the Quad, which I don't think it has any interest in doing.
Right.
He has stacked his administration with China hawks. Waltz, the NSA, Rubio, the Secretary of State in the past, when they were both senators, congressmen, had said that they saw the Quad they felt the Quad should be elevated to the status of NATO.
Right.
And I've had nothing but very strongly if I'm correct, Rubio sponsored a bill calling upon India to be treated on the same level as NATO,
Yes.
NATO partners. So all the language from his team has been very clear. Quad ultimately is not much of a bargaining chip because
Right.
it's still in many ways a nascent organization. It
Right.
doesn't have a secretariat. It doesn't do anything yet military.
Right.
And Trump has made it very clear that what he expects from China concessions are economic.
Right.
So he may be prepared to sacrifice or provide a window for TikTok to come back,
Right.
or something of that's not overtly a security concern for the United States. It's a minor one. But he's not prepared to, I think, do anything beyond that. But what he's really looking for is giant concessions from China on the trade front, which I don't think China will actually be able to fulfill. Trump's demands were too high last time.
Yes.
And if you may remember, he struck a deal with the Chinese on tariffs and imports, which the Chinese simply failed to do.
Right, absolutely. And Ambassador Sajanhar, the point that Pramit made, the fact that the Quad really doesn't have a secretariat. We really don't know what the Quad really does. Is it like an Asian NATO? I think every country, including India, has strongly denied that prospect. But what do you see the Quad really becoming under Donald Trump in the next couple of years, in the next 3 or 4 years? Will we see more of the same that we did in the past? Is this more of a posturing organization or a quadrilateral where all 4 countries jointly threatened by China's rise in Asia take positions on it without doing much on the ground?
Okay, let me put it this way. A couple of points that you have made and what Pramit also said. That it is just mere posturing. If it was mere posturing, let me recount what, Wang Yi, the foreign minister of China, had said when Quad was revived in 2017. He said it is like a bubble on the surface of the ocean. It is froth. And it is going to disappear in no time. It will not have, again, the example was given of 2007, when the only meeting that had taken place in 2007, after that, it did not meet for the next 10 years, for a variety of reasons, which we don't need to go into right now. But he had predicted, but that has not happened. And so, what China, and for that matter, Russia, because Russia takes China's lead on these matters, Indo-Pacific, Quad, etc. What it says is that it is an Asian NATO. That means they are seriously, China is seriously worried that it has great potential. I can see that there is this huge sense of insecurity as far as China is concerned. And but there are other countries, particularly India, I would say, which is not keen to sort of, transform it into metamorphose into a security alliance or a partnership or relationship. So when we had the new Prime Minister of Japan saying that, we would like the Quad to transform into an Asian NATO, India was the first country which said that, we do not have any intention of doing so.
Of military alliances,
Yeah, the point that you make is, what we have said, what Prime Minister Modi had said, I think, at the Tokyo summit in 2022, that Quad is a force for global good. So we are basically providing, global public goods to the countries in the region, particularly Southeast Asia, particularly ASEAN, because that is where you feel assertiveness of China is getting much more, particularly in the South China Sea. So all the initiatives that have been taken, whether it is on humanitarian assistance, whether it is on domain awareness, whether it is on coast guards, it's on infrastructure, it's on education, health, it is basically vaccines, it is basically to provide, in my view, greater options and greater opportunities to the countries in the region so that they don't have to depend so heavily upon China, which can then, coerce them to succumb to any of its demands as far as, China's other interests are involved.
Absolutely. And, to those public goods, I'd like to add some military goods as well, Ambassador Sajanhar. That India seems to have done its own share of countering China in the Southeast Asia. It's sold BrahMos missiles to the Philippines. It's in talks to sell it to Indonesia and to Vietnam. Pramit, what do you make of this? India finally amping up its game when it comes to arms sales, not afraid of China anymore, selling them to China's neighbors, especially around the South China Sea?
I think the limitation for us to sell BrahMos in the past was never India, it was really Russia. Because as you know, Russia provides a scramjet for the BrahMos. And from what I'd heard, there was a problem getting the Russians to agree simply because of their relationship with China, which obviously is much friendlier than ours. But that seems to have been overcome. Now suddenly we are in a position to sell the BrahMos to various countries. Philippines being the first, now looks like Indonesia, and maybe Vietnam as well. I'd just say on the Quad, if you look at the joint statement that was issued by the four ministers,
yes,
what I think was interesting was that it makes a reference to the secure, quote, security in all domains.
right.
That the Quad would now be looking at that. This is, I would argue, a slight shift in the language. And was partly led, I think, by India at India's request, because India will be, as you know, hosting the summit probably sometime in August and September. Yes. It's also noticeable that while it's a very short statement, because obviously this is not this is more a signaling process, given that the administration had barely been in office for 24 hours, and Rubio, Secretary of State, had only been confirmed a few hours before the meeting was held. In fact, I heard the Senate fast-tracked his confirmation so that he could attend that meeting.
Yes.
There was no mention of ASEAN centrality. And as you said, the language, while it did not mention China, was quite implicit in stating that China was the primary concern. So I thought that, given that it was a short statement, it was very interesting that it was the language I thought was sharper on the security side.
Right.
And I think for me, is a signal that we're going to start to see some movement on that front. Right. But as you said, India is already being more open and willing to take on China, if you wish, or at least do things that would threaten China. And that includes the BrahMos cruise missiles. If you notice, Jaishankar, Nirmala Sitharaman, the Prime Minister, in their speeches, increasingly, you'll often find a mention of Taiwan.
Yes.
And I think that we're going to see some movement on that relationship. We already have a very good economic relationship. Literally dozens of Taiwanese companies have settled in India now. But what they want is a political relationship, and I think we're going to see the beginning of that falls short of recognition. But something right now we've never had anything with Taiwan. No Indian minister's ever met a Taiwanese minister, for example.
Right.
So yes, I think we'll see that Quad becoming a little bit harder on the edges than it has been from now, and I think that's exactly what the Trump administration would be happy to embrace.
A Quad that's a little harder on the edges, as Pramit Pal Chaudhary just said. Ambassador Sajjanar, I just want to read out that line to you, what Pramit just mentioned, the fact that the joint statement says that our four nations maintain our conviction that international law, economic opportunities, peace, stability and security in all domains, including the maritime domain. All domains, does that cover space, cyber, the land boundaries as well? Has the definition of the Quad kind of expanded into multiple realms, and therefore you would see cooperation on other frontiers as well?
Yes, I would tend to agree with that, because I think the agenda and the scope of the Quad has been expanding, from day one. If you remember the first virtual summit, which was known as the Spirit of the Quad in March 2021, it, basically was discussing three issues, that is critical emerging technologies, the COVID-19 vaccines and climate change. And after that, we have such a huge array of issues on which discussions are taking place. And I think the statements have been getting increasingly harder. Let's face it, that from 2017, when Quad was revived, there were no joint statements or declarations. After that, whether it is in the current statement or earlier, China has never been mentioned. But, it is Chinese activities, whether it is in terms of coercion, it is terms of aggressiveness, assertiveness, so resolution of disputes, etc. It is unmistakable as to, what Quad is referring to.
Right.
The other point I think we need to recognize is that if you look at the Wilmington, Delaware statement, the summit that took place in September, there it is very categorically mentioned, for the first time, that the resolution of the issues in the South China Sea should be on the basis of the award of the Permanent Court of Arbitration. In 2016, you would recall that, your viewers would recall that Philippines had taken China to the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague in 2014. And they had, in their judgment in 2016, categorically rejected all claims of China under the 9-dash line.
Yes.
So, and for the first time they have mentioned, so who else could it be referring to, but China? So I think the statements have been getting stronger, statements have been getting more direct. And here also, when you're talking about all domains, I think definitely the issue must have been that, none of the other Quad members has a land boundary with China except India.
Absolutely.
So I think that also needs to be encompassed, that needs also to be incorporated in whatever discussions are taking place. We shouldn't really limit it only to maritime issues.
Yes.
So I think that is, this domain definitely has the continental dimension also, and also the extraterrestrial, space, cyber, etc. issues.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, a Quad that seems to be getting harder around the edges, as our experts have just told us that. And that's the story here after that very significant meeting of foreign ministers, the Quad foreign ministers in Washington. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sajanhar, Pramit Pal Chaudhary, for joining us.
Thank you.
Oxfam's latest annual inequality report says the world will see its first trillionaire a decade from now. And not just one trillionaire, but 5 of them. Now, a trillionaire is someone who's worth $1,000 billion. And the world's richest man today, Elon Musk, is worth just $449 billion. Besides Musk, the 5 others who could hit the 1 trillion mark are Meta founder Mark Zuckerberg, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, Bernard Arnault, chairman of LVMH, are the other 4 potential trillionaires who could actually become trillionaires in the next decade or so. Interestingly, 4 of these 5 potential trillionaires were at President Donald Trump's inauguration a few days ago. Will Trump's presidency now be run by these tech czars? 4 of them are tech czars. Joining me on the News9 Plus show are Ambassador Jayant Dasgupta, former ambassador to the WTO, and senior journalist Manish Chand. Looking at the current worth of what is called the broligarchs, the bros who are oligarchs, very rich people. Let's just look at them quickly. Tesla CEO Elon Musk, $449 billion. Meta founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg worth $217 billion. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is worth $245 billion. Nvidia CEO and founder Jensen Huang is worth $117 billion. Chairman of LVMH, Bernard Arnault, is worth $188 billion. Ambassador Dasgupta, the 5 potential trillionaires for you, the businessmen who could become the world's first trillionaires. 4 of them were in the Capitol Hill under the rotunda watching President Trump being sworn in. Is this the shape of things to come in the next 4 years, that you will see billionaires becoming trillionaires?
Well, if you look at the figures of growth of wealth of these people, they have increased their wealth even during the Biden years.
Right.
In fact, more so during the Biden years, at more than 100% for some of the billionaires, including, I think, Elon Musk.
Yes.
And Jeff Bezos has also not done too badly, because he's also grown his wealth to about $230 billion. So I don't think really that whether it is a Democratic president or a Republican president, it will matter all that very much.
Right.
The issue here is has many facets, but just one of those is that if you look at the billionaires, potential trillionaires list,
yes,
then you'll see that most of them, of course, are big tech people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Jensen Huang of Nvidia. But there are also a few who could be joining their ranks. Bernard Arnault, for instance, is specialized only in selling products to the very rich, ultra rich, and very highly priced products. Gautam Adani also figures, I think, amongst the top 10 with a net worth, of course, today of about $75 billion, as the Oxfam report mentions, or other reports mention. But the point is that their wealth is growing at more than 100% per annum.
Yes.
Or in 2 years.
Yes.
So that is the one of the very significant factors.
Yes,
The
absolutely.
second
Wealth is
factor
growing.
is
Yes.
the second factor is that this is only a sign of the growing inequality
Yes.
within nations. As the UN has repeatedly pointed out, and mind you, this is one of the 10, it is number 10 of the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes.
Why is it so? Why is reducing inequality all that important? Not only amongst nations, but within a nation. Now,
Right.
the point is that there could be inequality because of race, gender, religion, caste in India and a few other places, and it also manifests an inequality of opportunity, an
Right.
inequality in terms of education, healthcare,
Right.
and prospects. And this, this restricts socio-economic mobility. This poses, it permeates the growth environment and gives a kind of a feeling of uncertainty, insecurity amongst the people
Yes.
who form the bulk of the population. And ultimately, this has two very deleterious consequences.
Yes.
One of them, of course, is that it will affect economic growth in the medium to long run.
Right.
And two, it will have a very, very adverse impact on climate change.
Absolutely. They just
So
pulled out of
these
the
are some
Paris
of the
Climate
reasons why-
Accord. Yes, absolutely. And that's the fallout of, I guess, the cohabitation with big tech and the trillionaires and the broligarchs, as they're being called. Manish Chand, 5 trillionaires now expected within a decade. What does this mean for the world? We're just discussing the zooming fortunes of some of the richest tech moguls in the world. 4 of them, 4 of the richest people in the world were under the rotunda with Donald Trump.
That's right. We saw that famous picture at the inaugural where these 5 would-be trillionaires or the big tech billionaires,
Yes.
multi-billionaires, were seen in the same frame. I mean, what this is all boils down to, this is the new age of, Trump's America or even otherwise.
Yes.
New plutocracy.
Yes.
Oligarchy. I mean, we thought only Russia had oligarchs, but America had bigger oligarchs.
Well, there's a new term for it now, Manish Prasad. It's now called the broligarchs. That's
broligarchs,
like
okay.
the broligarchy has been unleashed upon the world now.
So to get a sense of what this 5 trillionaire represent, it's a like of, when you talk about BRICS, for example.
Yes.
You have Brazil, which is like $1 trillion plus.
Yes.
South Africa is $500 billion. I mean, these 5 guys would mean a combined GDP of many sub-Saharan African countries put together.
Yes.
This kind of disproportionate concentration of wealth
Yes.
in the hands of a few, it does not bode well for the world and for America as well. What intrigues me is that Trump has come to power on the plank of, delivering better lives to average Americans who have been sidelined by the earlier system,
Yes.
and all that. And if this is what it amounts to, that we are going to see more billionaires and trillionaires,
Yes.
then there is a strong streak of double standards here. There's a strong, it doesn't ring quite true,
Yes.
I mean, come to think of it, these billionaires are products of the system.
Yes.
I mean, it's not that they are like, self-made geniuses. It's the entire American system has, in a way, connived to put them there. And also, these people are controlling the information empire.
Yes, absolutely.
So
The
they
big
are,
tech
in fact,
czars.
manipulating
yes.
the entire world,
Right.
in a manner of speaking, with this kind of power.
Yes.
And we've seen that, and it's not only America now, even in India, you see a billionaire club is growing.
Yes, not just in the US, but in India as well. But this unprecedented concentration of power and technology, and of course, with technology comes power. Yes, Manish, closing comments from you.
So basically, what I personally strongly feel, and if you put it together with the statistics of the world's, more than 3 billion people living on less than or around $3 a day, what the Oxfam report has brought out.
Yes.
I mean, this is absurd, when we are talking, all our talk about delivering sustainable living, eradicating poverty, and all that. And also, one has to also question, what are they doing with this kind of wealth?
Yes.
If you look at people like Elon Musk, and he was going around at that inaugural, like a big bravado, and and when Trump said that we'll plant the flag on Mars.
Yes.
Now, listen, you go to Mars, but what about a planet Earth, which needs more care, more nurturing?
Yes.
And more compassion, more justice.
Absolutely. Yes.
Going to Mars is
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you, Manish. Yeah. Thank you very much. And let's not forget that Donald Trump promised a golden age, and that golden age possibly is lined with a lot of golden bricks, as we should call these trillionaires, possibly these potential trillionaires. Thank you very much for joining us, Manish, and of course, Ambassador Dasgupta.